Hello, and welcome to the Unit 5 of the online result-based monitoring and evaluation course delivered by Cloneshouse, Nigeria. We're quite excited to have you. This is Unit 5 of the first 5 units of the first week of this online course. Just before we proceed, I think it would be nice again um, to quickly go through what we've done from Unit 1, which was focused on, yes, just an introduction, an overview of the course, and also was looking at how you use Google Classroom as well. And Unit 2 focused on result-based monitoring and evaluation itself, some nuances, and also trying to get some concept about traditional monitoring and evaluation versus the result-based monitoring and evaluation. Um, Year 3 focused on developing theory of change for your programs, projects, or policies. And yes, we were able to develop a theory of change for a particular case study together. And Unit 4 focused on the result chain, where we discussed input activities, outputs, outcome, and impact, what that means for a project or program or policy, whichever one our monitoring and evaluation target is. Unit 5 would now be focusing on preparing or developing key indicators for such projects, considering your theory of change and the result chains that you have identified. So, just to also bring us to speed, this was what we have been able to do on the first case, Unit 3. We were able to develop this cursor pathway for case 5, which is a program that is delivering chlorine to communities in Kiribati, owing to the fact that they have a problem of access to clean water and area. So we were able to develop this. And in Unit 4, we were able to assign the result chain to our theory of change. So in Unit 5, what we will be doing is to now develop key indicators based on elements of our theory of change, for example, for each of this. So let's get things started. Unit 5, this is actually supposed to be key indicators. Apologies for that. This is supposed to be key indicators Unit 5, so we're supposed to explain to others here's the different types of indicators, identify ways for developing indicators. Then you're supposed to be able to plan and design indicators for your program. So this is a lesson objective for this unit. Apologies again. This is actually supposed to be key indicators and not result chain. So in the next few minutes, I will be discussing with us what key indicators are, what steps that you need to develop your indicators, types of indicators, and criteria for assessing indicators. Just to point out to you again that you should feel free to comment on the Google Classroom about this unit. If you have comments, the Unit 5 should be the last one here. So please feel free to make some comments about this unit, perhaps while you're going through this course. So that's quite important. So what are indicators? What does indicator mean to you? So, I mean, you can think about um, several activities that you have defined doing. For example, if you are working on a project that is supposed to enhance the capacity of teachers in primary schools, for example, and one of the activities is to conduct pedagogy trainings. So trainings that are targeted at pedagogy. Um, so I mean that's just an activity. That's an event. Um, you might have planned that in a quarter you're going to be um, having 10 of those trainings in a quarter. So what you need to do is to, so an indicator for that will be you now measuring, for example, the number of hours you have committed to training the teachers and pedagogy. So it's a measure of such events. Is a measure of concepts, is a measure of behaviors as well. So, and I mean, you can also think about your outcome statement that we talked about in Unit 4. So it's a measure. So now you're measuring such outcome statements. So um, um, increasing maternal mortality. That's an objective, but it's an outcome statement. So what do we use to measure it now becomes an indicator. So we call it. So we say it's a measure of concepts, events, or behaviors. The indicators themselves are not the concept or the event or the behaviors, but rather you can use it to reflect about um, your event. You can use it to reflect the concept. You can use it to reflect the event. So, like another example might be, yes, increasing farmers' income in a community. Um, you need something to measure that. So, which might be, for example, um, you might think about, okay, changing household equipment of the farmer. Maybe that's what you want to use to measure that the farmer's income has increased over time. So the indicator is actually the measurement of your, think about it as your outcome statements of your activities of whatever you have gotten out for inputs. So um so that's what we refer to as indicator. So um but how do we develop indicators? There's been so many. I normally get this question from people, like, you're an M&E officer. Are you supposed to design the indicator and just parachute it to the community um, that you're implementing the project or the program? So it's important it's important to know that you can actually use pre-existing indicators where possible, and pre-existing indicators you can find in so many um, development indicators. Pre-existing indicators you can find. There's the new sustainable development goals, which provides a whole lot of indicators. Indicate.net. So indicate.net is a website where you can find a whole lot of, predetermined um, indicators. So either it's for humanitarian relief or you're talking about development indicators. So for example, maternal and child health, you can come to their website and just think about, so here are you looking for an impact indicator, an outcome, an output indicator. whichever one. So you can see age at first birth, parents' attitudes towards daughters' forced delivery. So you have lots of indicators. So preconception, be- before birth. So use of modern contraceptives, knowledge of benefits of delayed childbirth, skilled birth attendants. So these are maternal mortality related indicators. So these are predetermined indicators which has been developed, collated by the people at Indicate. So you might want to check it out. It was developed by the Czech Republic Development Corporation. Um, well, I find it useful in some sense, not like it's you can localizing it now becomes a challenge, but I mean you can get a grasp of several indicators for several thematic areas at indicate.net. So you can use a pre-existing you can use pre-existing indicators where possible, and you can also search for so there's the SDG goal indicators as well. um, if you can Google and check it out. There's a list of all indicators that is needed or that you will need for um, the SDGs, for each of the SDGs actually. So there's the official list of SDG indicators, which you can actually download the PDF version of it, and here you go. So each of it has its own 1.1, ending poverty in all its various forms. You can see some of the indicators, a proportion of population covered by social protection floor systems, proportion of population living below the. I mean, these are national indicators and not necessarily for. I mean, if you are an NGO working, yours might not necessarily be this, but I mean, you can start thinking. It gives you an insight into you developing your own indicators. So you can use pre-existing indicators where possible. So let me close that. Indicate. Let me close that as well. Close this as well. So yeah, you can partner organizations that work in the same population. So if you're an NGO, if you're working with an NGO, there are other NGOs that might have been working in the thematic area you're working in as well. So you can reach out to them for the indicators they're using for their program. Also, I mean, the United Nations, the World Bank, bilateral, multilateral organizations always have these workshops on indicator development. So you can also reach out to them as well to get country level, state level, local community level indicators. Involve beneficiaries and knowledgeable members of the priority population. So if your intervention is focused on the community, it's important for you to involve the people that are within that community or those that are knowledgeable about it, maybe researchers, maybe a university that is closer to the community, so you can discuss what success really means, because that's what indicators is all about, like what success will mean in that context. Involve stakeholders and knowledgeable colleagues. So like I said earlier on, also you could think about other stakeholders, partners, and also colleagues that are knowledgeable in that thematic area as well. Then involve local researchers, anthropologists, sociologists. Yes, I mean, you could do this via a workshop on validating the indicators that you have developed while creating an M&E system. So I mean, that's important. That's an important thing. So that the indicators are are valid and people can easily report against it. So it's very important. These are key 5 steps that you can use. I know 3, 4, 5 are very, very important and key, um, especially for people that are working at the local level, the municipalities, and states, but maybe one might be relevant to those working at the national government, but with some little tweak and contextualizing it. So what are the types of indicators that we have? Also, I mean, this has also been some form of argument, like in terms of indicators, like what kind of indicators do I use? So many people are used to. So there are 2 types of indicators actually. There's the numerical indicators and there's also the non-numerical indicators. Numerical indicators are used in quantity, so in terms of quantifying your outcome statement. So it tells you about the scope of your program and the degree of change in terms of proportion. So, and they can be expressed as, yes, numbers of rates per proportions, percentage of, and also as averages. So, think about mortality rates, infant mortality rates, maternal mortality rates, number of trainings, think about percentage literacy, think about average income of an household. So these are all numerical numbers because they occur in number rates and I mean we have types of indicators already here that you can take a look at. In terms of counts, rates, percentage, average, or medium. So in your, it's important that I let you know that on your Google Classroom, yes, there are some additional materials you can look at. It has examples of indicators. It has worksheet indicators as well. So feel free to look at some of these additional documents. Could guide you properly and give you more examples about indicators that you might want to look at. So there's the non-numerical, which doesn't use numbers or age or rates or percentages. This type of indicator is quite interesting because it makes you understand how and why things work in your program. And mostly we normally use them at the outcome, output, depending on the type of program you're implementing. So it allows you to know the how and why things work in your program. So, and it's always used for, yes, some complex social concepts such as gender equality. So programs that involve gender equality, monitoring of organizations in terms of their development. These are complex social concepts, drug addiction. So you want to think about using more of non-numerical indicators, and they can be expressed as quotes, typologies, themes, phrases, summaries. So like there's a whole lot of them here. So in categories, you could term it as quotes, you could term it as themes, so perception and all that. Yes. So these are different examples of indicators. So if you're putting together your indicators, what should you look at? It's important to think about this criteria. That's an important one. It must be measurable. Yes, it must be measurable. So think about it. How measurable. So like in terms of the quantity and quality of it, is it numerical? Is it descriptive? So if you look at one and two in here, if you look at one and two, consumers feeling about the network of Airtel Nigeria Limited, and the percentage of respondents who mentioned that they have experienced no drop call rates um, in the last quarter. You could see that two might be easily measured. You can easily measure two, indicator two, than one, because you might not necessarily be able to measure consumers' feeling. So, but you can take a percentage out of your respondents who actually mention no drop call rate. So let your indicators be measurable when you're putting them together. It must also be practical, like something that can actually happen, that you have money to execute to collect the data, because indicators uh, uh, needs data for you to be able to assign that indicator to a result chain. So if you look at one and two here, again, one says the number of targeted girls who understand their basic human rights percent. Then the second one is percentage of targeted girls who understand their basic rights. So the second will be collected via a representative sample through a poll, and the first one is census data. It's very difficult for you to get census data, but this depends on the kind of program you're working on. Yes, a national program can use census and use one, while just a community program, I mean, you have few resources, so you would rely on a representative sample to be able to collect such data for such indicators. So think about how practicable your indicator is. If it's something that is easy to collect, yes, it must be reliable. There are standards for writing or collecting indicators, or for coining indicators. I mean, and that's why we use mortality rate and not death in a primary health care. So because um, measuring death might not necessarily be reliable in terms of it being a routine monitoring data. But if you talk about the average, uh, yeah, you can easily measure that and not think about using um, a routine monitoring data of one death, two deaths in a day, or three deaths in a day, but you can actually use the average. Um, it must be relevant. So it must be relevant to your own program, not like a generic. So not now being generic. So if you look at change in access to power in secondary school and change in access to power in a girl child at the girl child learning center. So secondary schools might be generic. This program might be a girl child learning program that wants to construct girl child learning centers. So instead of you saying access to power in secondary, it is better you perhaps you provided power to that learning center, so for girls to have access to. So what you're saying here is, oh, you can only measure the change in access to power in those learning centers and not generally in the secondary school. Don't forget, if you have questions, comments, you can put it in your Google Classroom comment box, and we'll be happy to respond. Think about your indicators being useful to the management. So it's important that you collect information that management can easily um, respond to. So if you look at this preset of indicators as an example, so this is one, number of computers, numbers of staff meetings, then you have two, numbers of computers that are fully operational, and you now have the third one, amount spent on computers. So which of these three do you think management would want to know about? The management of a program or so? So assuming that this program purchases computers uh, for uh, for a program, so and they need indicators for that. So which of these three do you think will be useful to management? Um, so these are our side questions. So the question is for you. So um, you can feel free to comment on your response on the comment box just in here on unit 5, which is key indicators. So the question again is, which of these three do you think is useful to management, especially in order for them to make decisions? Because your indicators actually should inform decisions. So which of the three? Put it in the comment box of the key indicators. It must be responsive. When we see indicators, it must quickly show the in-depth analysis of changes. It must reflect how results look like and not necessarily generic. So if we look at the first indicator here, percentage of SMEs that are performing, and also the percentage of SMEs that are adding more than 50 jobs in a quarter. There's difference between the two. The second one can quickly show you. So the question will be, when you say performing, what does performing means? So performing here means adding more than 50 jobs in a quarter, and not just saying percentage of SMEs that are performing. So in order just to quickly recap, yes, indicators are measures of the events, they are measures of the occurrences, they are measures of the activities that have been planned for a particular program. So, and indicators can be numerical or non-numerical as well. So, numerical are those indicators that you can use in terms of numbers, in terms of rates, in terms of proportions, while the non-numerical ones non-numerical indicators allows you to understand the how and why things have changed in a particular program, and they can be in form of counts, in terms of perception, teams, in codes, and also that in you putting together your indicators, it's important that one, in terms of steps, one is that yes, there are already indicators that have been developed by several other people. You can make use of that, and we made mention of indicate.net. It's a website that you can go to and collect indicators. Also, the Sustainable Development Goals have its own indicators as well, so you can think about that, especially if you're working for the national government. A second thing to consider is that you can actually talk to other partners or stakeholders that are working in the community you want to work. They can have their own indicators, so you can leverage on the availability of the indicators as well, and also they can share the lessons they've learned using some of their indicators. That's where it becomes useful. Thirdly, is that you can hold a stakeholders meeting with key stakeholders in the community. You should actually, do that in order for them to validate the indicators you'll be using. And also think about knowledgeable stakeholders as well, so like researchers, or other NGOs working in the community, for them to validate the indicators you'll be using. So those are quite good steps. And think about criterias for you selecting your indicators. It needs to be measurable, it needs to be practical, it needs to be responsive, it needs to be useful to your management as well. So before we wrap things up, so there's this case study 5 we've been working on. We are now supposed to develop indicators for the case study 5, and that's part of our assignment actually. So we're supposed to develop key indicators. So if you go to let's go to our assignments where we have unit 5. So this is the unit 5 key indicators. There's a document here. We're supposed to make a list of indicators necessary for the success of this our chlorine distribution program, which we already did a theory of change for. So so in here is a list of, so you can list out indicators. You're supposed to list those that are non-numerical, those you think that are non-numerical, and those you think that are numerical. Like I said, most numerical indicators, so I will start from non-numerical indicators. Numerical indicators, you mostly see them at the activity stage and at the output stage, yes, of things here, because they are numbers. So for example, and I'll take each element, chlorine distribution. So I could say the number of chlorine bottle distributed. In fact, it could be household, right? So to radio programs on chlorine use. So radio program per week. So I want to know the number of radio. That's what it means. Number of radio program per week. We can say 3. Let's go. Hospital outreach on chlorine use. I could say average hours of outreach per week for family drama on clean water. I could say average hours of performance Grammar performance. So these are all numerical indicators, and what I've done, you could see it. I actually clicked the activity stage. I could think about this as I can move to, let me say, output stage. I could, because I can also get this. Let's say this. So this is actually an output related indicator. Um, during outreach, you see that this is an NGO. This is normally what you import. I'm going to. I can do this insert to. Let me see if I just need one. Move. Okay, insert row. Yeah, so I can put this as output. Yeah, and it's important to do this so that when no, this is activities, or you just say input if you want activities. So and for the output stage, yeah, for each activity you need an output. Hospital week doing outreach. 7, let's say callers radio program. So if it's a calling program, so this is output stage, and you can also see so number of households. So I mean, this is interesting because really you get to know what's going on in that way, and I would now you can also you can go on and on, but let's say that I can also add tools and ways, which is the change in behavior. So let's give you household use chlorine to purify. Household uses chlorine to purify their water. Um, this could just be the percentage of household now using chlorine to purify their water, um, and the access to clean water here. So access to clean water, so which is a um, percentage of household that have access to clean water, for example. Yeah. So I'll just say percentage household or percentage of the population. Yeah, that's another thing. And let's look at it again. Also uses chlorine to purify water. And then if you realize so you can there's those that do not. We can add that as well as an outcome, but I'm going to stay there um, a bit and pause there and come to let's see if we can, like we said, non-numerical indicators. It's always important to have it output. So if we look at our output here, so don't forget the output is something that the management can control or the implementer. So say perception of this perception of radio noise, because we're getting radio noise radio program. So none of this is left out of the activities that we are doing. So we don't just bring the indicators and use the indicators that we can program. You can have cases of things where so maybe potentially cases of an household that used to have diarrhea maybe 3 months. So, so that's so yeah, could be the rate of diarrhea infection, but true below. So rate of diarrhea infection. So we just you could go on, and that's why we say it's important. Also, do not because each of these means you're going to be collecting data for each one. So um, you do not necessarily want to burden yourself with a whole lot of indicators. So currently we have 11 for numerical and we have 5, that's 16 indicators in total. So I'm working on case number 5. You can enter it in, and that's it all for um, so it's also important to put in the result chain so that you'll be able to know when you're supposed to collect and at which result level does that indicator mean. So this is what you'll be doing for any of the cases that you've chosen, and I hope this is useful um, for us as well. So that's case 35 that we just finished the assignment for that, and I hope you complete your own as well. So, like I said, if you have any question, comment, suggestion, do not hesitate to put it. So once you're done, it's important to once you're done, it saves automatically. So I can open this again, view assignments. Since I've completed it already, yes, because if you open it again, you'll see that it's the completed. You can see. So all I just need to do is to then turn this in. So I just click on turning. Blah, 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 then I turn it in. So I'd turned that in already. You can see this shows that I've submitted it already. So and that's it. So make your comments if you have one. If you have visuals, please feel free to reach out to local@cloneshouse.com or training@cloneshouse.com or call the number just here, and we'll be happy to reach back at you. I hope this is useful for you. Like I said, there are also additional resources which are very useful for this class. So you find them at Unit 5. You can see there's a worksheet preparing indicators, examples of indicators. So I mean, you can take a look at this worksheet and also use it. Yes, I mean, we use this at times also. What's your social concept? Which component do you and your team think your program can impact? So the component means um, what effect will that have for you? So this is the objective. You can put the objective of the indicator you're looking for here, which are relevant, possible to target to your local context. So what this means is that for each of what you have in here, you put them here, and well, you might leave 2 and 3 if you do not know. Then go to the indicators. What will success and failure, how high and low, good or bad levels on each component look like in your local setting? So put your indicators here. Put the concept, which is any one of this, in the sheet. On which of this is there good agreement among people you consulted? So, I mean, if you're consulting with people, like we have said before, then put it here. Put their remarks here. So if you have a long list, you can then choose from one. So, I mean, this worksheet might be useful for you. Great if you find it useful. So on that note, thank you so much for listening. So this is the last unit. We'll look forward to week 2 of this course, and have a good time.